Welcome back to This is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to talk about Commander, Tough Rules, and Cool Interactions, episode 68. Today's episode is going to be the first in a mini-series that takes a look at how math works in Magic. I've done a few episodes already on some math in Magic, but this mini-series will focus on that. This first episode will take a look at what it means to double something, specifically a creature's power and toughness. I know that for a lot of you, this episode will not help you at all, but that's kind of how a lot of Magic rules are. They're like performing a magic trick or trying to figure out a riddle. Once you know the answer, how the trick is done, it's now really obvious. So this series is for those players who haven't yet gotten involved in these sorts of game situations, and now they know how these kind of things resolve. Okay, so let's take a look at a card now. Choose Your Weapon is an instant for 2 and a green that has 2 modes for you to pick. And in this case, we don't really care about the archery mode, but we do care about the 2-weapon fighting mode that says double target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. So let's say I have out my Goreclaw Terror of Kalsisma, which is a 4/3 creature with a triggered ability that says, whenever Goreclaw Terror of Kalsisma attacks, each creature you control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. Goreclaw has a base power of 4, so that means that when he attacks, his triggered ability will give him a +1/+1 and trample effect until end of turn. What happens if I use the Choose Your Weapon on my Goreclaw before combat and then I declared Goreclaw as an attacker? The Choose Your Weapon says that his power is doubled until end of turn. So does that mean that when his triggered ability pumps him +1 power, that he would be a 4/+1, making him a 5, and then 5 doubled to 10? That is not how this sort of math works in Magic. So what does it actually mean when a card like Choose Your Weapon says to double target creature's power and toughness until the end of turn? What that Choose Your Weapon really says in terms of the game's logic is that when it resolves, it looks at the creature's current power and current toughness and takes that number and simply adds that number. So in that previous scenario, the Goreclaw would have been a 4/3. The Choose Your Weapon would resolve and see 4 as the power and 3 as the toughness. So Goreclaw would get +4/+3 until end of turn, making him currently an 8/6. And then when he is declared as an attacker, he will get +1/+1 and trample until end of turn, making him finally into a 9/7 creature. This is why you do not see and will never see a static effect on a card that just says to double creature's powers. They will always be an effect that happens one time right then to double it. I'll provide one more scenario. This is the actual scenario I've seen come up in some games that I've played, and it inspired me to make this video. My opponent controls a Mirari's Wake, which is an enchantment that has the static ability that says creatures you control get +1/+1. And then my opponent also controls an Unnatural Growth, which is an enchantment with a triggered ability that says, at the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until the end of turn. So let's say my opponent has a 2/2 Grizzly Bears on the battlefield, with these 2 enchantments also out on the battlefield. They thought that their Grizzly Bears would get buffed from Mirari's Wake to be a 3/3 creature. Then at the beginning of combat, the Unnatural Growth would double the bear from 3/3 to be a 6/6, and then the Mirari's Wake would give their 6/6 bear +1/+1, making it now a 7/7. But that's not how Magic works. Okay, so now on to the bonus scenarios, and I did say scenarios. I have 2 for you all this time. First scenario, you control an Unnatural Growth as well as a Calamax the Stormsire, which has 2 abilities. The first says, whenever you cast your first instant spell each turn, if Calamax the Stormsire is tapped, copy that spell. you may choose new targets for the copy. And then his second ability says, whenever you copy an instant spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Calamax. So, you move to combat, attack with Calamax, which taps him, and then before damage, you cast your first spell of the turn, which is Choose Your Weapon, targeting Calamax, and picking the mode to double Calamax's power. After all is said and done, what will be Calamax's power? The second scenario, you control Grizzly Bears and target him with Choose Your Weapon and the mode to double his power and toughness. But in response, your opponent casts a Hydro Surge, which is an instant that says target creature gets -5/-0 until end of turn. After the whole stack has resolved, what will be the power and what will be the toughness of your bear? Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you have even learned something about these crazy rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta!